Welcome to this video. I'm often asked, what is my thought process when I'm approaching a certain engagement? So, what am I thinking and how do I actually put that into works? So, I'm running a VM called Metasploitable today, and it is full of holes. And so I'm going to use a very simple hack to get inside the machine, but this will kind of explain what my thought process is. So the IP address of this machine is 192.168.1.171. Now, if I did not know that, I would go through a typical scanning process to see what's there, a discovery of what is on the network or what is the target, what is the version of the operating system, and things like that. For time purposes, I'll skip over that and just go straight into the actual mechanism for doing the hack. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and open up a command line, and I want to make sure that I can reach the machine for this event. And so it looks like the machine is up, so I'll stop that. I'm going to be using Nmap for my scan. Nmap does a lot of good stuff, and it'll bring you back a lot of really good information. And if you use this along with something like hping3 and you capture the packets maybe in TCP dump, you can get a lot of really good information, a lot of good intelligence on the target, really before you start interacting to try to gain access. So I will remind you that hacking is not legal unless you have express written permission or you're using your own system and equipment, and that's what I'm doing here. So just be aware of that. You can get into a lot of trouble if you're interrogating other targets without their written permission. So what I want to look at is the service version detection, and so I'm going to use this particular operator, and it's going to probe the open ports and determine what services are there. Again, knowing what the services are running is a good place to start, especially if you find that things are unpatched or versions are old or what have you. That's a real good place to start. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this in sudo. It's going to be Nmap. I'm going to use attack v, lowercase v, for verbose output. I'm going to use the attack sv with a capital V to get me the version, and then 192.168.1.171, and I'm going to run this with a reason to try to figure out why Nmap thinks that something is open or closed. Put in the password. It's going to go ahead and start. It's going to start with a discovery. It's going to do a quick scan of the ports, and then it's going to give us some versioning information. If you want to know what the progress is, you can just hit the enter or the space bar, and it's going to give you that information there. So while that is running, I'm going to open another command window, and I'm going to be using Metasploit. So I'm just going to go ahead for time purposes and open MSF console and let it go ahead and do its thing. again, going back over here, these things, they start to run kind of slow, and then all of a sudden they will finish up. Okay, so I've got the discovery up here, and then really what I'm interested in is this information starting down here. So I want to know what ports are there, what their state is, opened or filtered, what service is running on each one of those. Here's our reason that it's telling me that it's open. It was a synac, is the way that it got that. And then the version information. And so the I just basically start from the top. Port 21 is open, and it's running VS FTPD version 2.3.4. So if I just start with that information, so I'll just go ahead and I'll copy that, and let me open a browser and just see if there's any information out there about that. So I'll just put that in, and I'll say vulnerabilities, and so it does give me back Rapid7 and the exploit database as well. Looks like it's a backdoor command execution, so let's see what that looks like here. So again, this was disclosed in 2011, so the possibilities of you finding this in the wild are fairly remote. You may, but honestly, it's probably not there. But again, this shows the line of thought for this, and it gives some information about what can be used with Metasploit framework to actually work this particular vulnerability. So you can copy and paste this stuff in if you would like, but I think it's probably a lot better if you try to understand what you're doing and find the information for yourself. So I'll close that out. And the first thing I want to do is just clear my screen here. And so I want to see if there's any information about that in Metasploit. So if I search for that, I find out that there is an exploit. It is for Unix. It's FTP, which is exactly what we're looking for here. It is a backdoor. There's the date. It is an excellent ranked exploit to use. So I think I'll probably use that. So what I want to do is I want to use exploit Unix, and I'm just hitting the tab to complete that. FTP, and then the VS, just like that. Okay, so I'm not loading a payload. I could look for a payload, maybe a Unix reverse or some kind of shell type thing, but I'm just going to default to this. Now what I want to do is I want to take a look at what the options of this are. So one of the parameters that we have to give it is the rhost, which is the target itself. So I need to set up that IP. So I'm just going to set 192.168.1.171, and then I'll use the up arrows to look at the option again. It is set. Our port is port 21, which is FTP. If you had other parameters that you could set for the target, they would be down here as well, and you could set those, but we don't need to for this particular event. So the only thing that's really left is to exploit and see what happens. So it's starting. I can see the user ID. That looks good. It's found a shell and it's going to open that shell for me. So it looks like that we are communicating with that. And so let's see where we're at. So I'll type in W. We are at admin here. I can say who am I, and I am root. I can do pwd. I am at the slash, and I can do the ls tac lah and see what is in front of me here. So a lot of good information. We are in. We pretty much own the machine. Some good loot information that we might be able to use or certainly take a look at is the users. So I can cd into Etsy. I can do a ls tac lah again to see what's there, and we do have a password file and we do have a shadow file as well. So let's cat the password file out. And so we've got a lot of good information here. We see that there's a lot of different services running, which we saw over here in our scan. A lot of different password material there. Now we can go ahead and we can do the same thing with shadow, and we see that we've got some shadow passwords here. And the important thing about this is to see that some of these placeholders, these are not being used, which tells me that they probably have a very lax policy on those particular users. So again, you could probably begin to exploit those as well. So I'll go back up to root. I'll take a look at what's in front of me there, and so we know by looking at the scan over here that we've got HTTP open. It looks like it's running a Tomcat on port 8180. So what I can do is, let's just go ahead and open a browser up, and let's go over to that 192.168, and there it is, port 8080, and there's our Tomcat server right there. We pretty much know the way that we can get into the target. We have full access to it. So that's just kind of some thought process about how to get into it. And so I hope you found this useful, and leave me some comments, and I'll talk to you next time.